welcome. I was going to do this workshop just to give people a little bit of a background into meditation, because I feel like what we experienced the other day was wonderful in many respects, but I think the journey there could be a lot easier just with a couple of tips and tricks. So I don't know what your experience is with yoga and meditation. How much had you done before you went into that process?
So I have attended some yoga classes. I think it started with yoga first, but it's now 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I was telling most parents that she was a yoga teacher, so 3 times a week actually I did a class. So that was like the introduction. But then after that, I mean, it was for 7 weeks and then quite intense, like quite a lot.
Yeah, that's quite a lot.
And it was like my base for the following years. And yeah, I guess I have stopped like 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So yeah, it's been a while back. And meditation, like seriously, I've started like 3 years ago with the first Vipassana course.
Yeah.
And then continuously practicing for like 6 months after that. And yeah, so I've learned the practice, learned the technique, but I never actually learned how to sit properly or what to watch, where to be careful, what are the risks in terms of posture. Yeah.
Okay. So what I was going to do, I'll just give a background from where I come from. My tradition that I follow is known as the living tradition of yoga. So it's passed down from the sages, Satchitananda, Swami Shivananda, and it's passed through this lineage through my teacher, who's Krishna Prakash, and he is living in Bangalore. And I've spent some time, been there three times, to experience what it is to live yoga at his place. And so that's where this information is coming from. And what I'll do is I'll just share the screen. The limbs of yoga, there's 8 of them. It's also known as Ashtanga yoga, but it comes from what we call it comes from the Yoga Sutras and Patanjali. So this is where the information comes from. Dealing with it through this lineage, it comes through on evolution of it. So it actually works in a linear scale. So in traditionally, only once you had mastered number 1 and 2, would the teachers move you on to 3, would move you on to 4, 5, 6, and 7 is actually where meditation is. And 8 would be the last part of this whole process, which is self-realization. And that is where yoga is trying to direct one to, is to unite. And that's actually what yoga means. Yuj is a root word for yoke, which is to move behind the body and the mind and unite with who we are beyond these different layers, the 3D reality that we get to experience through our senses, so our mind, our emotions, and our body. So it's moving behind that to who we truly are beyond that. So the first 2, it's interesting, I'll move here, are the yamas and the niyamas. And this is working with the mind. And he briefly touched on it when we were at the workshop. Kindness and non-violence was one of them. But a really important thing to remember is that these things actually swing both ways. So as well as it's good to be non-violent to other people, other things, it actually applies to ourselves as well. So doing things that are going to injure us or violate ourselves in any way is actually against what these observances are. which is one of the reasons I felt the need to let people know, is because pain is a great teacher, and it's taken me far, especially with Vipassana. But suffering is definitely optional, and doesn't have to be suffering, you know. So that's just to give you, and these are pretty simple, not simple, very hard to to apply in real life, but they're like sort of the moral codes, and truthfulness is one of them. Truth in terms of keeping our promises with other people, keeping our promises with ourselves, and understanding the truth of who we are. So it works on many different layers, and asteya, non-stealing, which is pretty straightforward, but that can also be stealing of other people's experiences, as in one up, you know. You both go to the same place, but then maybe the other person says, well, but when I was there, this happened, you know. There's this, so it's about stealing other people's experiences and their time as well. So trying to avoid that. And when we start to move into these observances, especially with the moderation of senses, which relates to anything that is anything that's taking our senses away. So if that's food, if that is alcohol, social media, drugs, consumerism, anything that's taking our senses, it's about moderating that. And it's not saying that we need to cut everything out. It just says that there needs to be sort of, when your senses are controlling you, then it's a problem. Then it becomes, then it ends up fluctuating the mind. So it's sort of like if you have the drink, have the beer, but don't go and get wasted, because then you are out of your senses, and then that causes you to do things that will disrupt the mind. And that in turn, later down the line, will affect the way that you're able to meditate. So that's non-attachment is another one, and he does talk about this when he's talking about cravings and being attached to things, that especially because everything's impermanent. So if we are attached to it and then all of a sudden we don't have it, this can create what we call fluctuations of the mind. The next 5 are more inner observances. So cleanliness, which deals with our thoughts as well as our physical body, keeping it clean, keeping the thoughts clean. And the next one relates to contentment, and that is just a case of being content with whatever it is, wherever you are. And it's not saying that you don't want more. It's just saying whatever you have in this moment, be content with it and grateful for it. And again, this will stop the mind reaching forward, mind reaching to the past, and it'll keep it in the present. And again, this will lessen the fluctuations of the mind, and this will mean you can sit for longer. Tapas is referring to like fire and the discipline that it takes to do this, the discipline that it takes to, to be truthful, to say no to that extra beer, to just keep on the path that's going to take you towards self-realization of who you are. Svadhyaya is looking at this continual learning of yourself, and it's also looking at, when you say scriptures, there are different tools and processes that are there to help you reach a certain state. And exactly what he mentioned in his workshop was that, excuse me, what he mentioned in his workshop is that these tools and processes, go and experience them, live through the tools, do the breathing exercises, do the postures, and then figure it out. The answer, you will figure out the answer through experiential truth. Do you have any questions?
So far, so good. No, I think, yeah, I'm following it.
And then, so Ishvara Pranidhana is, it's about surrendering to a higher consciousness. It can also be about surrendering to yourself. And there's a fine line between that, but we won't go into too much of it. But what it basically is saying is to surrender to what is. And this is a big part of meditation, is to actually to surrender where you are in that moment. And acceptance. So that's working with the mind, and that's not something that can be done in 1 or 2 days or 10 days. It's sort of like a life. It's a life journey, and my teacher would say you have many lifetimes to actually start living in that way. It's not very few people would ever get that in one lifetime. So it's a continuous journey, and we always, according to the tradition, we're always coming back and we're learning, and we come back and we learn and we evolve. Now asana, which is the third part of that tree, the third branch, it actually means to sit. So the reason we do those poses, the poses that you see in gym, studios, so yeah, that's it. So when we see these guys, and it takes a long time to get into, well, not really that long. There are ways around it, and I will share a couple of these postures. And the reason that I've been able to sit in lotus position, full lotus, is because of the fact that I'm working on my joints. I'm working on my wrists. I'm working on my hips. I'm working on my ankles, and it's called anti-rheumatic. I will send it to you though, but it's called anti-rheumatic poses, and it's extremely important for the lymphatic system as well, to get rid of the waste through the lymph nodes. And what it is also doing, I pretty much do it every morning, and it's not the most glamorous postures to do, and it's funny how it's actually worked into Vipassana, because I knew about Vipassana a long time ago, but my teacher was he wasn't so convinced by it. But I wanted to go, and he advised that I should be able to sit before I went. So I spent a lot of time just actually working on the joints until I knew that I could sit into lotus and I could sit properly. But once you start doing it and you do it consistently, and I'm talking 10, 15 minutes every day, that's how long it literally takes to do them. But once you are able to, and that actually helped me with the liking and the craving, because even though people find it boring, but if you do those exercises, you can go so much further in the other postures. But people don't do it because it's not, it's just working on your joints, and it's literally like moving your wrists like this, moving your ankles, like rotating your foot, rotating your hips. And the reason why this is quite important is because we don't want the knees above the hips. It's super important that the knees are below the hips because of that build up in pressure that can happen in the thighs, and thrombosis can happen, which is build up of blood in the thighs. So it's not actually good to sit without knowing that, first of all, for such a long period of time, for consistently. If you do it once for an hour and you push through it, it's 2 hours even, it's fine. But 9 hours a day, 10 days is quite intense. And So yeah, that's what the yogis were working for, and that's what the asana practice is there, so that we can sit. And then moving on to the pranayama aspect of it, which is that breath of awareness, the breath awareness.
No,
No problem.
another question, but I guess so. To sit is also like in yoga, like holding a posture. Sitting in a posture. It's not necessarily sitting on your bum on the chair or something. Is that right? Like the literal translation.
No, to sit on the floor.
Is it just sitting? Okay.
Yeah, to take your seat on the floor. Asana, to sit. Yeah, in a chair, no. Stools that you could sit on. Not stools, but you know how everyone has the wooden
Yeah, there's like benches that you can knee.
benches. Yeah. So that's to sit on the floor. That is the goal.
Cool, yeah. Thanks for clarifying.
Yeah. That's literally 15 minutes a day, and you can get into lotus. I reckon within 1 year, if you do a little bit extra, if you're doing 6-7 times a week, 10-15 minutes. Yeah, I think it's possible. But the pranayama is the next aspect of it, and this refers to energy management. Pranayama would be the next one. Once we're able to sit, then we start using the breath, and the breath is where we're able to use what's called prana. Prana is like life force. It's basically, it's called chi, it's called nun, it's called wakan, it's called great spirit, it's called Holy Spirit, and that's just the spirit of life, which is prana, energy. And when we do the different breathing techniques, we energize ourselves and we clean our nadis, which are basically the channels in which the energy flows. And this, I don't know if you know much about meridians or nadis in the Chinese culture. That's what the chi flows through. And we do different types of breath techniques, like conscious connected breath work, which is what I do. I do workshops on it, and when you do the specific breathing technique, your whole body is energized, and you enter what's called the bliss body. Yeah, so it's quite exciting because a lot of these breath techniques you can actually get to very altered states of consciousness, and you can move behind these different layers. So they're in the yogic tradition, there's like 5-6 different layers. There's the mind and emotions, the prana layer, the physical body, the intellectual layer, the bliss body, self, and there's Atman. So there's more, but that's like to get to your individual soul, which is where these techniques are leading towards. You can do that through, if you're lucky enough. To be honest, I've only experienced the bliss body through this techniques, but the people that have been in my class have experienced out-of-body experiences and into outer space experiences. So yeah, that's quite exciting to be able to use the breath to enter the bliss body and reach these different states of being. And then, so on this journey towards meditation, towards ourself, so now sort of we've dealt with the mind. Pranayama is there. It also deals with the mind, but it's also dealing with the body. So you're purifying the mind, you're purifying the body, and now we start the journey inwards. So we do that by withdrawing our senses. And this is actually where meditation should start. Seeing it as a journey inwards to who we really are. And we start by taking our awareness to the sounds around us. And the thing is, that's the thing. We don't need to sit for 2 hours a day. I mean, it's great if you can. Wonderful. Like, that's amazing. Because it does take dedication to sit for 2 hours a day. I mean, I manage 1 hour a day, and 1 hour plus my yoga asana is more than my postures is more than enough for me and where I'm trying to go. But with regards just to developing mindfulness, because I guess that's what we all want, right? We want to be more mindful. We want to be more present. We don't want the mind to be all over the place, but that takes practice and cultivation, and that journey starts by taking the awareness to the sounds around you, and it takes, they say, 2.5 minutes of that to start this process of withdrawing inwards. So if you're able, I mean, it's super difficult because to actually sit for 2.5 minutes without your thoughts coming up, it's not that easy. But that's the start of the journey. The start of the journey is actually 12 seconds. You know, if you can sit for 12 seconds without your thoughts coming up, then that's sort of the start of the cultivation of mindfulness. When you get to 2.5 minutes, you start this process of moving in. But if you can sit for 12 minutes without thinking a thought, without anything coming up, and just being with those sounds, that's when you become a master. So it's like, basically, it's not about getting upset with ourselves because we can't sit for 2 hours. The benchmark is actually really low. It's actually, well, not low. It's really high, but it's at 12 minutes.
To think, like, you know, like sitting in an hour and even just 12 seconds of that, or like at the time not having a thought, it's like, yeah, it's such a huge gap, you know. Like, so within an hour, actually, you have many opportunities to have 12 seconds out of thought, and if you have that only once in an hour, actually, it's a big success. So
Yes,
but
exactly.
empowering as well to know that now, to hear it. Yes.
Yeah, because that's the thing. Like, it's quality over quantity. You know, day 9 comes, day 10. Like, you've been concentrating for a long time, and there's fatigue that's happening 100%. And you can even notice that on the last day. There's huge fatigue that's happening mentally. But I feel like it's motivating to know that, like, okay, cool. So if I sit down now, I listen to the sounds around me, and I do that for 12 minutes, like, that's actually all you need to do to start the cultivation, you know. But you know, as you develop your practice, then you extend it to 15, then you extend it to 20, 25, 30, and then you get to the hour. But also, you know, from the tradition I'm from, 3 hours is actually, that's what you need to be in the pose for, and that's what's called victory over the pose. And 2 hours, yeah. But if you want victory over the pose, it's 3 hours. But that's sort of something different. And this is for people who are wanting to go to that sort of distance and test themselves and to see how far their practice is. But like I said, you're sitting down for 2.5 minutes. You are getting that, it's called withdrawal of the senses. You're starting that process inwards. And if you can sit for 12 minutes, you know, that is the goal. If you can sit 12 minutes without thinking the thoughts, you've arrived. It really is a long time. But it's something to work with, you know. It doesn't seem like, okay, well, you know, I have to sit for 2 hours every day to get the benefits. It's not like that. And we can do this through other different ways. So there's things called yoga nidra. And I shared it. I don't know if you've joined my group. all things breathwork. But I shared this yoga nidra where you lie down. It's actually also a manifestation tool. It's to bring health and wellness, whatever you want, into your life. But what it's also doing is it is developing this attitude of the witness. So all these processes are trying to get you to who you are deep inside, and that's this witness that's looking outwards. It's the witness that sees your thoughts. It's the witness that can feel the body. It's the witness that can see what you're dreaming, right? You dream. Who's watching the dream? And that is the witness. High consciousness, the individual soul, whatever you want to call it. So yoga nidra starts this process of going inwards. And there's a couple of different techniques, and I would encourage. It's really nice. It's a stress relief, and it just takes away a lot of stress, and it's good to use as a manifestation tool. Antamona is the listening to the sounds around you, but then also moving one step closer within yourself, so moving into yourself and then watching the thoughts that come up. There's different levels, and that's level 1, listening to the sounds around you, and these are all types of meditations, but just different levels of meditation. Level 2, you're looking at your thoughts come up and what's coming up, and then you can move on to other things like breath awareness, mantras, which is chanting, and I'll go into a little bit of that just now. But another way of that we can use is silence. Silence is sort of the key to all of this, right? During meals, instead of talking to people or just being with your food and eating in silence. And just try that and see what that feels like. And this is also working with the senses and getting the senses, because the senses are there and they get distracted. They're doing what they do. The senses want to feel, they want to experience, and it's all external. So as we become silent, we do listening and we do yoga nidra, we're starting to move away from the senses and move inwards. And then so they sort of lead on to each other. So when we start withdrawing the senses, we start developing these powers of concentration. And if the one that we did in Worcester, we did body awareness and breath awareness. So those are the two that we looked at. And that actually, this is where the pain is vital. And I worked it out. I experienced it, that you actually do need the pain, because the pain keeps your mind really concentrated, especially when it gets really tough and it really starts to build up. It keeps you there. And what I noticed, because when I was going through my experiences, I actually on day 7, I had this experience where I was noticing the pain was getting transferred to a different part of my body. This energy was moving from my leg. It would come up, it would disappear as I did the body scan, and then it would end up in my shoulder, and I would notice my shoulder lifting up. I noticed my fingers getting tense. And what I started to do was I started to breathe into that space and then exhale, letting that tension go. And I started this continuous process, because I was like, it was so strange. I was going for a really long session and I noticed this happening, and I was like, just picked it up. I was like, wow, the energy's there, and now it's in my shoulder, and I'd see my fingers just slowly rising, and I was like, that's not me doing that. It just wasn't me. And I was like, okay, just relax it. And then The shoulder would go up, and I was like, okay, cool, relax it, relax it. And just this whole process of watching and relaxing, watching and relaxing. And then all of a sudden, it wasn't about the pain anymore. That built up energy, I was able to release it. So I could sit for longer. So the 2 hours now, all of a sudden, because I was thinking about the gong, but I was trying to use other techniques to not think about the gong, you know, especially the 2 hours. But once I learned this trick of just seeing the tension and releasing it, then all of a sudden it wasn't about the pain, it was all about the mind. And the mind all of a sudden was like, the mind was really interesting to see how the mind just was, it was like it was on a different horse. It was like, okay, cool, we've sorted the body out. Okay, now we're gonna. So it was just such a trippy experience, because actually the pain the first 7 days was keeping me in this concentrated mode, and I got to go deeper. But as soon as you took the pain away, it actually became harder for me, but not in a physical sense, but in a mental sense. And then other things to improve your concentration, you can do things like candle meditation, which is another one. So yeah, this is the 7th step meditation. And like I mentioned before, all those yamas and the niyamas, it's lifetimes of work, so that the mind can, because this is one thing that really got to me on the course is, these samskaras. It's one thing to get rid of the samskaras and release them, but if you're still acting in the same way and you follow the same value system that you followed before you got there, you're going to create the same samskaras. So it's sort of like it's almost chopping the head off without getting to the root. And to get to the root, you have to get to the value system. And that will, because the mind is what's going to distract you. The mind is the one that's going to tell you to move. The mind is, that's where it all stems from. So going deeper into the value system will give you greater results. When we meditate, it's also really important, the coccyx is this. See, our back can sort of arch like this. And the coccyx is pointing away. If you can see that, it's pointing away like that. So you want to actually root the coccyx so it's into the ground, and that will straighten the lower back, and then that'll straighten the upper back. That'll bring the crown of the head reaches towards the sky, and so that's the alignment. And you want it's like trying to find that center point. But also, what I found really interesting is that a gentle smile on the face is really, really important. And my teacher always goes through this, because your mind is looking for anything to get upset. It's like it's looking at your body language. And if your face is down and you're starting to droop like this and the shoulders are hunched over, the mind is like, it's like, what's wrong with you? Why are you so sad? Why are you falling over? So the mind is there constantly trying to pick things up, and it'll pick on anything. So the more that you can sit up straight and move past this craving and the aversion with a smile on the face, it's like the mind doesn't have anything to grab onto and to complain about. So for me, the smile on the face and the smile on the heart is really important. As I mentioned, the 12 seconds, that's what we're looking for. That's what, like, as we start getting to 12 seconds of no thoughts, that's what's really important. And if you can extend that to 12 minutes without thoughts, then you're super winning. Another thing, so mantra meditation is when it's chanting. So it's like chanting Om, 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 or there's different other types of phrases like Om Shri Matre Namaha. This is the easiest form of meditation. This is what's going to concentrate the mind. And actually, this is the practice. This is what needs to be done so that you can sit and do breath meditation or body meditation. So, finding a couple of mantras to say is a good way when the mind, because sometimes you're going to sit down. I don't know if you are sitting down. You are going to sit down and you want to, okay, I want to sit down for an hour. And the mind is going to be all over the place. So a good way just to practice and get the mind concentrated is to have a couple of mantras. And the thing about mantras are they're super powerful. They don't actually work on a psychological level. They work on a vibrational level. And that's the thing about them. Yeah. Yeah, so it's actually the vibration that is in training and making everything else in the body coherent. And that's why they're so powerful. And that's why it doesn't matter if we don't understand them. It's more about the pronunciation that's really important. And yeah, so there's also, yeah, like I mentioned, there's walking meditation, there's actually working meditation, and that's just being mindful with everything you do. You know, working meditation is when you're washing the dishes and you're cleaning the dishes and you're just fully in the present moment. Or if you're doing the garden, you're driving to work, you're doing your favorite activity, you know, and when you're really present, starting to work with meditation like that. So meditation isn't actually something that we sit down for an hour and do, or 2 hours. It's actually something that life is actually a meditation, you know, to sit with it all the time and to try and be present all the time. That's where the masters are. And that's why they are masters. Because the mind isn't telling them this or that. They've moved past that and they can just be fully present where they are with their breath, whatever it is that they use. Well, breath awareness, that is it. That is, if you can be with your breath all the time, then you will be in that state of calm, serene, non-agitated state of being. And the thing about meditation also, it's important to do it the same time, the same place. This carries energy. For vibration and energy is, you know, it almost sticks to things. And you can feel that when you do work, you know, you can feel the energy in that hall when you go to the Vipassana hall. So yeah, that's just another thing to bear in mind when we do meditation, is to try and do it at the same time, same place, same mat, and to carry that energy with you. And then the last one is self-realization.
Just one thing on
Yeah.
the mantra side of things.
Yeah.
What I used to do, or what I enjoy doing, is like throat singing and just feeling the resonance in the body, like not actually saying words or melody like in your mantras, but like just kind of keeping a vibration up and altering it slightly, but like feeling what the body resonates with, you know, like it changes actually each day. It's different to me, but then, you know, it's like more throat singing kind of thing. Would you say that's also useful? Like, for me, it helps. I mean, my experience, it really centers, because it puts my awareness to my body and like my being, like the present moment.
Yeah.
And I do something actively, you know, like through creating a sound. It's like it's not like sitting still and watching what's happening. It's also doing something. Yeah, so for me, it works well to focus my mind. If it goes to all sorts of places, just, yeah, like, would you recommend that too? Or would you rather say mantras are better because they have got a certain vibration that you can then tune yourself to? Yeah.
Um, well, but it sounds like but it sounds like what you're saying. It is a type of mantra meditation, no? It's a vibration, you said.
Yes. So it's like, I mean, I often actually start with like or like
Mm.
also go look through AUM, like start with an open mouth, and then making
Yeah.
an ooh, like a round mouth, and then into and each time like feeling like, you know, where did my body, like how does it feel in my body? You know, often it's in the chest area, which really feels like intensely, but it sometimes even moves through other places in the body as well.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's so we've got different energy centers. I don't know if you know much about them, the chakras or energy centers. And these different energy centers actually have different mantras, different vibrations. I only know a couple of them, like ram, vam. But yeah, so when you're playing with those type of vibrations, you know, you're activating different energy centers within the body, and you're activating the spinal column. So when you start getting those vibrations working in the throat, and if it's working in the third eye area, you're working with the pineal gland, you're working with the pituitary gland, starts to open things up, and it starts to just depends on your belief systems, but it starts to open the crown chakras up, and it starts connecting you to higher consciousness. And it's not just only yoga that experiences this. As you know, it's the same with Christianity and singing hallelujah. It has the same sort of opening effect. You know, that's why music is so powerful, because it does have this, it opens you up and it connects you, because again, everything, it's, if you look at life as waves of energy, and it's about attuning to that wave and that frequency, and you know that has a certain power to it, especially when the same sort of frequencies come together. um, and you know that is basically with all these processes that we're doing, especially, you know, it starts from the food we eat. It starts from the food that we eat actually starts to make us vibrate at a certain frequency. So part of the reason why we are eating vegetarian food is it releases what more of this, it's called sattvic, more pure, a more pure type of energy, and which just basically means at the end of the day that we're vibrating at a different level. So when we eat meat is heavier and it makes us lethargic, and it's associated with tamas energy, and that is just, and then you get rajas energy, which is more energetic. Tamas is more lethargic and slows us down, and sattvic is more pure, more bliss energy. So ultimately, with all these processes, we're basically moving through these different layers to this pure consciousness, this pure energy. And that's what the journey is. That's the journey, is behind these fluctuations, behind the body and what we're eating, and behind the bliss body lies our essential nature, which is vibrating at a certain level. And that is the last stage, which is called samadhi, which is self-realization. So then I feel I had to just expand on this topic of kleshas and the forms of suffering. It's when we are become more aware of these ways that we suffer, we can start to lessen the effect that they have on us. So the first one is just avidya, which is ignorance, misconception of true reality. thinking things are permanent when they're not, thinking that everything is pure or everything is impure. So it's just about, misconception that, you think the world's flat, but it's just not. Okay, so and this can create a form of suffering, because when it's shown to be not true, just have to look at what happened with Copernicus, who was thrown in jail because he said that the world was round. And the suffering that he went through from the church. So it's ignorance, misconception of true reality. Asmita is over identifying with the ego. So the sense of I, mine, this belongs to me, this is mine, this is my car, until the car gets in a crash, and then you don't have a car anymore. And then the ego gets upset. Rajas refers to these likes and these dislikes, and we went through quite Devesh's dislikes, Ragas's likes, and we've seen how, and then the last one is fear of death and attachment, fear of death and security. So when we start to do things that we don't really want to do, but we do them because it pays the bills or puts food on the table, and that stems from this idea that if we don't eat, we're going to die, so I've got to do this job, so this fear of death is an instinctual fear, and it's super hard. It's the hardest of all of them to actually transcend, because we are born to survive. We come into this world and it's our natural instinct to survive. So to actually move beyond that and say, I'm going to do this and not worry if I live or die, is one of the hardest actually to get through. I've watched a couple of things lately, and it was about, regrets and people not doing the things that they wanted to do in life because, they were scared that they couldn't put food on the table. I go through it myself. Sometimes in this career, I'm like, all my careers, it's all about survival. Everybody wants a certain standard of living. Everybody wants to put food on the table. Everybody wants to just live a good life, right? I feel like so that fear of not being able to provide that life for you, and you'll end up on the streets, and you'll have no food, and you'll be homeless. It's a real fear, and one that definitely can control a lot of the stuff that we do. Even if we don't want to do it, we'll do it because the alternative doesn't seem like a really good alternative. And I don't know if you have any questions.
Thank you. Yeah. No, not questions, but I really enjoyed the last part as well, like the suffering and it's actually like life in a way. It's suffering, like being alive means to suffer almost, and it's not a bad thing. It's actually, a gift, because it's kind of a reminder that you're alive, and it's like that.
Yeah.
You're working on something. It's like that. I also see it as like a choice, like that we do on the lowest, like very subconscious level. Like we choose to live, like each breath. It's actually, I've had that experience once where I realized we decide to live. We decide every moment we decide to live, and there is a part of us that could decide to die, and immediately would be dead. Like I've had that experience, and it's actually a choice to suffer, because it's like what makes life worth living almost. It's like, but we always try to get out of it. We always try to distract ourselves, whenever there's something that we don't want, or there's something we want, like the craving aversion thing. I just find it so ironic, I suppose, that so it reminded me of that, and I think it's very helpful to me to kind of stay in the practice, because I do meditate like twice a day. I don't always manage a whole hour, but that's fine. Like I just do my best, because I see that there's so much value in it. To just dedicate a part of my time to that, and to also not really try to reach a goal as such, but actually enjoy the way, enjoy the process to go there.
Exactly. Yeah. And to know that it's all good for you, right? It's not, doesn't have to be this.
There's so many benefits, that benefits are like a bonus to that, but it's actually the journey itself that really, I feel, is why I want to do it. And I think that's keeping myself like sort of going, even though sometimes I didn't manage a whole hour, and then I could have said, oh no, I didn't do it yesterday, so I even tried today, kind of thing. But it's like I don't see it this way. Like I see it, even if it's for 5 minutes, even if it doesn't happen. Like to really watch my focus, to try to ground it, like I said, like straight, and see what that does to the spine posture. Because I do notice like being back or forward, and also my face, to relax my face, have this little smile, because especially during the course, my face started to crunch, like be very intensely, like sort of like not relaxed. And I noticed that it's actually stuff in my body also, like it moved to my face. Like whenever my face was cramping, it's actually I was holding something in my body somewhere else. And it brought my awareness to that. And then I was looking, okay, where in my body is tension? And I could relax that. And my face would stay a bit more relaxed for a while, but then it came back again. And like watching signs, that they are related to other things. So it's very interesting. I enjoyed the whole everything you said, because it just gave me much more context on the practicalities. It's not just about sitting 10 hours or like sitting a long time and then observing what the sensations are. It's also more to that. To sit. And I like also like trying out different ways of meditation. And ultimately the goal is to meditate like we have awareness of the breath throughout the whole day, and even while you're sleeping, apparently that's possible, except for the deep sleep where not even the mind is active. But I mean, that's still far away. That's not that I need to go there. That's what I was just sharing just now. Like it's not about a goal. I don't know, like ultimately what the goal would be for me at the moment. I just enjoy doing it. Like I really see the value, and it's really about, for me, it's about that experience itself, because every time it's different. My mind wanders sometimes more, sometimes less. Sometimes it was a very busy, exhausting day, but actually my mind at the end of the day, I sit down, it's very quiet and calm. And then sometimes I wake up in the morning well rested, and then my mind starts to go everywhere. Like it's not really related, or I experience, it's not really necessarily related that a busy day is followed by a busy mind, and you struggle meditating after a busy day. And so it's very interesting observing all of that.
Amazing, man. And that's just alluding to that fact that even when you are doing meditation while you're cleaning the dishes or doing it while you're walking, that's all contributing to your overall state of being, your overall state of mind. And the more that we can make everything we do a meditation, the more that's cultivating mindfulness and presence, so that when you do sit down, it's not such a big thing, because you've been practicing and you've been preparing for it through the way that you live. So it should just get easier and easier to sit down. and to be with your thoughts, and also that whole idea of just being kind to yourself through the whole process. Like, you know, there's it's radical self-compassion, and I feel like they needed to talk more about that, because people need to hear that. You know, people are busting themselves out about, you know, not knowing what's going on, or this meditation's going crazy, or, you know, there's a lot of thoughts that are going around, and it's like, it's okay, you know, it's okay that there's these thoughts going around, and that's normal. That's how the mind works. The mind is there to problem solve, and it's there to grasp and think about the future and worry about the past. And that's just what it does. There's no point in beating ourselves up about it. It's just a case of acknowledging that and being with that, and then slowly moving inwards. Like, see, okay, I can see you thoughts. I see this crazy thought about my brother-in-law or my mom, or whatever it is. But just being like kind to yourself in that moment. And for me, that's like washing. The kinder you are to yourself, the more you can rinse the dirty clothing, the more you can rinse it out until it's clean. And then the mind will be clean. So, but we have to get to that stage where we're accepting compassion, and it's a continuous process over and over and again, that, you know, through that washing and washing, you will eventually, or we will eventually get to that pure state. But like my teacher says, many lifetimes.
Yeah, that's also like, I guess, it can be a motivation, you know, not to pressure or be kind to ourselves, to say, okay, there's a lot of time, there's many lifetimes.
Yeah, that's what she wrote. Namaste.